The final kicker is you have to tune into your intuition, because if you think about it, when we're little, we have our intuition and our intellect. And our intuition is stronger when we're born. When we're little, we're tiny. We start, 1 and 2, 3 years old. Our intuition never gets nurtured, at least for most people. But your intellect, it's like, okay, we're going to school and we're going to learn this, we're going to learn this, and we're going to go to college, we're going to go to grad school, we're going to go PhD. And the intuition is down here and it never gets nurtured. And the reason I bring all this up is because when you hear something that feels right, like say you read about a supplement that feels good, that feels right for you, and your intellect jumps in and goes, no, this is why it's not, and this is why it's because I read this and I heard this. And so instead, our intuition is here going, hello, I'm your guiding compass, and we get these intuitive hits and we've learned to ignore them.
This is Uncommonly Remarkable. We have surprisingly casual discussions about the lives and notable accomplishments of community leaders, entrepreneurs, and everyday folks like you and me. Think of this podcast as an opportunity to learn something new and to pick up on an entrepreneurial tip or two through open conversation. I'm Artis Beatty. I'm a doctor of optometry and the chief medical officer for My Eye Doctor OD. Though we will inevitably touch on topics within my area of expertise, the opinions and conversations held here are separate from my work with My Eye Doctor. Welcome. I am so excited to have you on this show, Jane. I've been looking forward to it really all day. And I just have to tell you, thank you for spending some time with me.
Oh my gosh. Thank you for inviting me. And I was even 30 minutes late because I was like, shoot, I was out in the yard working, I told you. And then I'm like, oh, I hope he still is okay. But
Yeah,
yeah,
you're very, very welcome. It's you're out there in the yard and you're doing things. You're probably planting things and making things grow. I have no skill when it comes to making a plant grow. In fact, I feel like I'm kind of hospice for plants. Plants come to me whenever they're ready to transition. So it is fantastic to talk to you because it looks like you've got a skill I certainly don't have.
Oh my gosh, you are hilarious. You got to stop putting that energy out to the universe, artists. Plants come to you to die. In fact, here's the perfect story, really quick. My husband, we love to buy flowers at Costco because you can get like 2 dozen roses and it's a great price. And so we keep fresh flowers on the counter. And every time he brings flowers home, he says, well, hopefully this is a charm, because every time I bring flowers home, they die early. And then like the next day, there's like flowers going, Drew.
Oh, poor
And
flowers.
so I told him, you got to stop saying that because they're listening to you.
Oh.
And like right now on my counter, there are some roses that I bought over a week ago and they look perfect.
Oh my gosh. I just feel like some people have the magic touch and some people don't have the magic touch, because I really, really talk to the plants. I look at them. I go up and I kind of want to know, what do you need to live? And so far, none of the plants they've not whispered back to me yet. So maybe after our conversation, I'll get a little better at it.
Okay. I like that.
So it is. So I think it's just amazing to learn a little bit about you and really learn how you've been looking at things that grow that are medicinal and really can help us. And so I know that you have a history of a father that was a botanist, and you learned a lot there. And you've even written a book, Be Your Own Shaman, which I think is amazing.
Yeah.
And so, but you've got such a varied background. We should talk about that a little bit, and then we'll get into some of the things you're doing today. So from what I understand, you are one of many siblings. Is that right?
That is correct, good sir. I'm second oldest of 14.
Oh my goodness, 14.
Yeah.
What was it like growing up with that many siblings?
I think when they come one at a time for most people. And, being second to the oldest, here's what happened. So my dad and mom met in college, and my mom told my dad she wanted a dozen kids while they were dating.
Wow.
So that was kind of right up front. My dad was like, all right, let's do this. So when my mom was just about due with her 5th baby, so the first 5 kids are like a year and a couple months apart. So boom, 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 they start, and 5 daughters. So right when the 5th daughter was born, my dad came home from work and said, hey, how would you like to adopt 3 more? Three kids. And my mom was like, haha, that's funny. And then later, after we were all in bed, he just said, look, I'm really serious. There's 3 little Native American kids, 2 little girls and a boy who need a home. And so there was a little girl who was 4, and I was 4. There was a little girl who was 3 and a little boy who was 2, and they were siblings. So we adopted them, and my mom and dad had 8 kids, and the oldest was 5.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so we did add 3 right kind of all at once, but it really felt normal for us just because that they came one at a time. A little babies, and my mom was a lover of babies and a lover of little kids, and so it was always like so amazing. And it did get a little bit uncomfortable when I was a teenager, though, and they'd gather us all around and say, hey, we're pregnant again. I'd be like, oh my God, you guys, there's 10 of us. So there were moments like that when I just thought, all right, stop already. But those were fleeting. And, my youngest brother is 2 months older than my youngest son. So I was pregnant with
Really?
I was pregnant at the same time my mom was pregnant. They're just 2 months apart. So this was just, I think that big families are a really beautiful thing. And I kind of wish, I kind of wish they'd come back a little bit, because you learn deep skills and you have this built-in group of friends, and you don't get to be selfish. Life is really different. And I'm grateful. I'm so grateful.
And that's why I asked the question, right? Because I have to imagine that you have a set of social skills that you build at home when you have this many siblings that you don't build. I mean, you may get some of that experience by going to school, but they don't live with you all the time. So you really get to learn how to interact with a bunch of different personalities, and it's got to play a role in the way you interact with other people.
Oh my gosh, there's no way it can't, And you really learn skills. You learn not to be selfish. You learn how to take care of each other. You learn what makes a household work with that many people in it. And being one of the oldest, I was baking bread when I was 13, 14 years old. That would be one of my jobs sometimes. I was doing laundry, and I was getting up in the middle of the night helping take care of a sibling. We all pitch in. This is it's like how you make a community work, right?
Absolutely. And
Yeah.
so your dad then would spend time with you guys, and you would end up learning a lot of things just because your dad wanted to teach you about the plants that were growing, right?
Yeah, I mean, we always had a big garden. And my dad was just, he was a botanist, like you said. And what really made him tick was he was curious about what made plants medicine for human beings. Because I think we've been so disconnected from Mother Nature, like the last 150 years. There's just been this push by modern medicine to get us out of, taking care of ourselves with grandma's herbal remedy, and get a little bit of echinacea and do this, or drink this tea and put this compress on your chest. And then, we've gotten away from that because there's no profit in it. And I believe what's happening now, if anything, we can thank 2020 for waking a lot of people up to a lot of things that are like, okay, wait a minute. I think that, my dad laid that foundation. So when 2020 hit, me and most of my siblings were like, okay, because we have this whole herbal apothecary full of stuff.
Well, what was it like, though, having to learn? Maybe it wasn't a having to learn, but really being exposed to Latin name versus common name, and trying to remember how all those things went together. Like, even if you start that at an early age, that's not easy stuff to do.
Well, it's not, but when you hear things over and over and over again, and it's not like my dad sat us down and lectured us. It was always like, we pull over. We got, there's something that's blooming right now. I need to show you guys. Or we were always hiking. We were always camping. We spent most of our childhood outside. It's very different than a lot of kids get right now, unless you live in the country. We spent our time outside. And so my dad was just always part of it. It wasn't anything that felt we were being lectured at and you have to memorize this and learn this. It just was a natural part of being a kid with a dad who did that.
And did you always know that this is what you were gonna be involved in?
No, 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 no. Not at all. So I got married, my first marriage when I was 18. So I
Oh
got out of
wow.
high school. I got married 3 months later, and then I actually the same month I got married, I joined a gym, and I took a group fitness class. It was called aerobics back then, like aerobics back in the early 80s. And I fell in love. So I right away I got certified to teach, and so I had my first career in fitness for 20 years before I took over my dad's business. So fitness is but I think it melds together. Like it goes
Yeah.
really beautifully together because it's not just here, take a bunch of supplements and herbs and do this. You've got to take care of the foundation of what our physical body, with exercise and stress relief and, love and all the stuff. So I had that base and no, I had no idea it would be me doing this. So,
That's pretty incredible.
yep.
I've heard other people, and I've spoken with other people who have said things that were similar. We don't generally escape too far from where we are going to end up, right? We tend to do
Yeah.
things that may be somewhat related. They may at the time seem like they're disparate, but when you look back, you start to see some of those connections. And I think the fitness world and the fitness industry is probably like that. And you're exactly right. You can do all the fitness you want, but if you're not taking care of yourself, then it doesn't really benefit you as much. And same thing goes for you can decide that you're going to be as healthy as you can from a supplement perspective, but if you're not also physically active, then it doesn't do you the same level of good. And so it's very interesting that you started in the fitness world, but
Yeah.
you're kind of still in the fitness world when you start to think about what you're trying to do for people.
Oh, for sure. And even after I restarted my dad's company, I was still teaching classes in the gym. And it was actually COVID the gym I was at when they didn't survive. So
Oh
I
wow.
was kind of like, I taught classes for 40 years, which I kind of figure when I had my last class in March of 2020, I didn't know it was my last class. I walked out of the gym. I said, to my class, see you guys next week. It was a dance party step class that I've been teaching for 20 years, this one class.
Oh my
And it was
gosh.
so fun. And I just said, okay, see you guys next week. And that was my last class. But I figured this. It's like, okay, I went out at the top of my game. Like nobody had to say, oh, maybe Jane should retire. She's been teaching. So it all ended the way. I was a little sad for a while because I didn't get to have my last class the way I wanted
Yeah.
but I do think that fitness, what you eat, all the stuff, they go together. They really go together. So I feel
And
lucky. I feel so lucky.
well, so now you're let's look at 2020. You're out of the class is over. Because we didn't know that was going to be the case initially, right? And so how did you decide that it was time to think about restarting or taking over the business?
Well, so my dad passed away 27 years ago. So he was actually really young. He was only
Wow.
62. So, and I'm almost 64. So I'm already older than he was when he passed away. So, and that's a whole nother story. He was a beautiful, grounded, incredible human being. But what happened is, my dad was the scientist. He was the one he was college educated with his botany and biology degree and zoology, and the education piece was really where my dad was. And he studied with a lot of doctors. He did a lot of research. And so when my dad died, none of us, all of us we didn't really have a clue that one of us were supposed to carry on his work. It was
Oh, I
so
see.
4 years after he died, me and one of my sisters decided we kind of started getting these emails and phone calls from the doctors who were his customers, because my dad mostly sold to doctors because his formulas had a pretty big education curve to them. They went after some hardcore issues, like Lyme disease and different cancers and all the hardcore stuff. So we started kind of getting, bothered a little bit by these doctors who were like, hey, we need your dad's formulas in our practice. So 4 years after my dad passed, me and his sister restarted his company. And then 6 months later, she backed out because she was just like, because it was starting all over. It was, and
Yeah.
none of us were my dad. So it was kind of this big, I was just like, I don't know how I'm going to do this. I don't know. But I just knew. There was something inside of me that was like, it's time for you to do this. And so 23 years ago, I restarted my dad's company and here I am. So,
Wow.
yeah.
Wow, wow, wow. And so when it came time to think about these complex formulas, then how did you take over? Like were there formulas that you had access to? Was it your learnings? Were it things that you started to put together?
So I started with my dad's group of formulas, and he mostly did herbal tinctures. So he was really well known for, taking herbs and extracting them in typically alcohol, an alcohol base, a high proof alcohol, and then the blends that he had, because there is a science and a knowledge and a complexity to herbs and the way they go together.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not just, willy nilly. So I just started with his group. I think there were 15, 12 or 15 formulas.
Oh,
And
wow.
all of us knew how to make them. We had his handwritten notes and his recipes, and we'd helped him over the years. Like if one of us would need to make some extra money, even as a married, grown up and married people, we'd, hey, Dad, you need some work done. We'd go help him. So these are all things that we all knew how to do. And so it wasn't that piece wasn't hard. But since then, it's now been a long time, and I would give anything to sit down and have a conversation with my dad
Mm,
about what I've learned and how I formulate, because I have a lot of knowledge. It's not school based,
mm-hmm.
but there's a lot of information out there. Plus, I have the deep wisdom that I grew up with, that just is kind of in my DNA. And it interests me. And here's the interesting thing. We talked about plants at the beginning. The plants talk to me. So it's a
See,
really,
this is my problem. They don't talk to me. Wow.
yeah. So I've really, and I use not just my own research when I formulate now. I now realize that after I do all my due diligence, I realize I have inspiration. And it's not just my dad helping me from the other side, but from my higher self and our creator. I tune into that, and it's just this beautiful. I haven't talked about this for a long time. I didn't say anything because I just thought this is way too woo woo, and people are going to be like, "What do you mean you have help?" It's like, well, so it only the last couple of years have I really kind of started talking about the fact that I have inspiration from a higher source that helps me when I do the homework, I put in the due diligence, and then I go to a quiet place and I tune in. I tune in to the energies of what's available to all of us, really.
Well, I think that's amazing. That's important because even
Yeah.
when you consider or think about even in traditional medicine, there is a lot of science-based traditional medicine,
Yeah.
but there's also always that component that is wild card is maybe not the best expression for it, but it's that piece that's kind of uncontrollable. And it's how some doctors are able to get results with patients and others are not. And so there's got to be some sort of connectivity or connective energy that is helping to kind of put these things together. So I don't think that's too woo-woo at all.
Yeah. No, I don't think it's woo at all, but I kind of have to say that because some people might go, "What are you talking about?" No, and I do think that there are doctors who are more intuitive and will listen to their patients, and they'll maybe ask a deeper question rather than
Hmm.
just write them a script, and they might just say, "Well, how's your marriage, or what's going on with you at work, or how are your kids doing?" Because there's a lot of underlying things that cause us disease and ill health that doesn't need a drug. It needs some understanding and some love, right?
Yeah, yeah. So talk to me a little bit then about this book.
Yeah.
You're in you're in the business. You've got people who are now relying on you. You're doing the formulas and you're getting out the product. But then you decide, I've got to write this book. What was the inspiration?
Well, so my dad wrote a book on his book on medicinal botany when I was a senior in high school. It's called From the Shepherd's Purse. And there were 48 plants. And crazy enough, I was the one who was his PR person. I was 17. And the people that I was calling all over the country, all these big 50-watt talk show radios, they had no idea they were talking to a 17-year-old. But I was the one in charge of helping book my dad on all these programs to promote his book. And I thought it was so fun. And then so he wrote this book and he self-published it. And so it's been out of print for decades. And the whole time that I've been going, running my dad's business and running the business now that I have had people ask me, you need to bring your dad's book back. You need to republish your dad's book. And over and over, and finally, I just thought, well, it never felt right to do that because this was my dad's original work. It belonged to me and all my siblings, and it was like, it just didn't feel right. So what I did is I took his original 48 plants, and then I doubled the content. I actually took it up to 94 first. And so I redid all the pictures of his. I had all the illustrations redrawn. I updated the content. Medicinal botany doesn't change that much. So some of the content I just tweaked a little bit because it's timeless. It's timeless knowledge. And then I brought it out. I published it myself in 2023. And then it got picked up by a publisher in New York. So, and that was like totally awesome. And then what I did is I added a chapter of sacred plants and psychedelics. So now there's 101 plants, and that was published last year in 2024. So
Wow.
that was it. That was my dad's book originally, and then I took his work and I updated it and I added content, and it's a beautiful love letter to my dad.
And how did you come up with the title? Because I find the title extremely interesting.
Yeah, and you know what's funny? I've actually had some negative pushback from people here and there about the title.
Really?
Yeah, it surprised me a little bit too because the pushback I've had is it felt like it was shaman in some, I guess for some people that feels like it's demonic a little bit. I've kind of got that a little. No, it's not. It's very rare that I get a little bit of pushback. And then the other people are like, it feels like I was borrowing from like an indigenous, So but here's the story of so the title is Be Your Own Shaman. And when I was first trying to get a title, one of the hardest things I realized is when you write something, coming up with a title for it. How do you do that? Because you want it to say what it encompasses, what's inside the book, as much as you can, right? So
Right.
I wrote Be Your Own Doctor, Be Your Own Healer. And I was having a conversation one day with my brother Bert, who's my Native American brother. And him and his two sisters are Eastern Shoshone. They're full-blooded Eastern Shoshone. And they've all really embraced their Native American culture as they become adults. And I think he just turned 62. So he's this beautiful Native American man. He has this long white braid down his back, and he's got this twinkling laugh. And so while I was trying to come up with the title, I was just chatting with him on the phone, and I was telling him about, Be Your Own Doctor, Be Your Own Healer. And then I said, well, I have an idea. What about Be Your Own Shaman? And I thought if anybody could tell me if this is a good title, it would be him.
Yeah.
And he said, oh my gosh, that's it. And then he said this to me, you can be like a bridge between the Native American medicine man and the shamans and the white people. You can be like this bridge.
That's fantastic.
And I was like, okay, that was a blessing from my beautiful Native American brother. So that's all it took. And I've had a little bit of pushback, but it's also like, look, you can't be offended by something like this.
That's right. That's right. That is absolutely amazing.
Yeah.
And so, one of the things that I found interesting in hearing you speak and talk with others is the quality of the herb is very important. Can you talk a little bit about that? Because I think there are lots of sources. If people are out there and they're kind of thinking, oh, I'm going to get this or that, there's a big difference, though, in the quality of what you're buying, and it's not always easy to tell. So, do you mind talking a little bit about that?
Yeah, that's actually really that's a really important question because there is a lot out there, and it takes people. You have to do some due diligence if you're going to be taking any kind of supplements or adding, especially herbal medicine, into the lives of yourself and your family. You need to do some research. So, if you look, I mean, that's such a big question. I could talk about that for a while, but if like to me, if I'm going to be putting something out into the world to help people with their health, it's got to be something I'm going to give to myself, my spouse, my kids, my grandkids, my siblings. Like, I want something that's going to improve my health. I don't want something that might improve my health a little bit and then has a whole bunch of fillers in it. So I think here's my best suggestion to people. And if you've listened to a couple of my other interviews, you might have heard me say this. Every single company should be able to provide what's called a COA, which is a certificate of analysis. So when we have a product, like say, I have this product that has cinnamon, cayenne pepper, and slippery elm in it. And it's a capsule product. We get these bulk herbs, the cinnamon, the cayenne, and the slippery elm. We get it into the facility, and then it goes through a really comprehensive lab test. We test it for any heavy metals. We test for any microbes, anything mold or bacteria, and we also test for correct species. We want to make sure that we're getting the right species because there are different species of different herbs. So we have to make sure that it's right. And then if anything does not pass that initial test, it goes back to the vendor we get it from. So we have sources now at this point that we are trusted sources, but every single batch that comes in gets this test. Then it goes through the process of being made, and then at the end, when it's in its final form, it goes through the test again. And then each batch, we make everything in small batches. It comes with this COA, Certificate of Analysis. And you can call us up or you can write us an email and say, hey, I'm interested in this product. Can I see the COA for it? And then it literally will send you this lab result that tells you exactly, did it pass on the heavy metals? Did it pass on the, so any company that makes herbal remedies or supplements should be able to provide that for you. So, and that's just one thing. But here's another thing for people to look at. And this is simple. You might have a product that looks really good. It's got really good stuff in it. But then say it has something like organic rice flour. Now that sounds great, right? It's organic, it's rice, that's great. But that's just a filler.
Yeah.
That's a cheap filler. And it's not that it's bad for you. But why would you want to pay for rice in a herbal supplement? And so that's just a way that and I'm not dissing any companies. I think that you, as a consumer, you just need to do your due diligence and just do some research.
Yeah, and I pose that question because I think that's true across the board with a lot of things.
For sure.
And there are tons of regulations that are supposed to help. However, there are very few regulations on supplements and herbal supplements in particular. And so there's a lot of misinformation out there. And I spent a few minutes tooling around on your website for your store, and I thought, wow, there's a lot of good information here. And so I wanted to ask that question, and because I know that you actually have the ability to supply some of these things for people who may be looking.
Yeah, and honestly, there are still a lot of regulations on us that people might not understand. And also, we don't have everything on our website that I wish we could put on there.
Oh.
I mean, as far as, and in a way, it's interesting because I think that regulations are important because there are people who would do things that are not in the best of for their fellow man. It just is, how much profit can we make? I totally get that. I totally get all of that. But at the same time, it kind of ties our hands a little bit. Like, I can't really teach what I do because like at the level that I do, level of what I know. But there is a lot of good information on there still. And then this is where a person gets to go, okay, this feels right for me from what I'm reading. And I'm going to go and do a little bit further digging and then go to trusted sources that can give me more information. And then here's the final kicker, in my opinion. The final kicker is you have to tune into your intuition, because if you think about it, when we're little, we have our intuition and our intellect. And our intuition is stronger when we're born. When we're little, we're tiny. We start, 1 and 2, 3 years old. Our intuition never gets nurtured, at least for most people. But your intellect, it's like, we're going to school and we're going to learn this, we're going to learn this, and we're going to go to college, we're going to go to grad school, we're going to go PhD. And the intuition is down here and it never gets nurtured. And the reason I bring all this up is because when you hear something that feels right, like say you read about a supplement that feels good for you, that feels right for you, and your intellect jumps in and goes, no, here, this is why it's not, and this is why it's, because I read this and I heard this, and so instead our intuition is here going, hello, I'm your guiding compass, and we get these intuitive hits and we've learned to ignore them. So that's a really important piece of being a human being.
I think that's important. I don't think people think about that as much, right? Because you do spend a lot of time learning this or that, and sometimes that can be at odds at kind of what you think or feel about something, and it's always that moment of reconciliation where you're trying to determine where you're going to go next, right? And so I think that's important.
Yeah, I mean, your intuition is your guiding compass. We need to learn to trust it more, and I think women have it a little stronger than men because we're mothers and we're protecting our children. Men, at least it's nurtured more in women, maybe, but we all have it. And I told my husband, I'm on my second marriage. We've been married 26 years, but before we got married, I told him, I said, look, you just have to know if we are ever getting ready to get on an airplane and I have a bad feeling, I don't care where we are in the world, because he's a traveler. We both love to travel. We've been a lot of places around the world. But I said, look, this is something you need to know about me. And it's only happened twice where we were in a foreign country, kept coming and coming back. And I just said, both times we heard that there were mechanical problems with the plane. And everyone was fine. They had to land somewhere different both times. And we get these intuitive hits because they're telling us something. They're giving us messages. So, sometimes we'll get an intuition to drive a different way than we might normally drive. And we might not ever know why we weren't supposed to go that way. But just those are nudges from the universe, from God.
Those are things you have to trust.
Totally. Yeah.
So, in episodes, I always like to understand what the guest has learned along the way, because there are a lot of people who listen who are thinking about starting their own business or breaking with tradition or doing something different, and there are pieces of knowledge that successful people have that they are just listening for. So, as you've gone on to write the book and you're running the business, are there things that you've learned that you wish you would have known, or that you should tell other people as they're thinking about doing something that maybe they're not sure about yet?
Yeah, I would say you have to do something that makes you happy. When I stopped, so I was managing a big fitness center when my dad passed away, and I managed it for a couple of years, and I was bitterly unhappy. And I was the one who was making the most money in my marriage at that time. It was a big corporate chain of fitness centers, and I was managing one of their clubs. And I was really good at it, and I was making a lot of money, but I was not happy. And my kids had just graduated from high school, so I was like, I said to my husband, I think I want to restart my dad's company, but there was going to be no money. I knew it would take me a while. I didn't even know how I was going to do it. But I knew I wanted to be happy, and I was tired of corporate America. So I would just say that if you do something that makes you happy and you do it with purpose, then the abundance will always come. Always. It doesn't matter, and then you just have to be consistent at it. And you have to, so when I restarted my dad's company, I honestly thought, okay, well, my kids are graduated and I hope I can just bring in enough money to supplement my husband's income. And I thought, well, our days of travel are probably over, at least to the level we were doing it.
Oh, yeah.
Because, but I was actually okay with that. I was like, I just need to be happy. That was all I wanted. And then I think we need to, there's this little meme that you've probably seen where these two guys are digging into a cave, and they've got these little pickaxes, and there's a cave. They're almost to this place where there's gold. But one guy, he's almost there and he's giving up. And the other guy is still going. So I think you have to keep going at something you love and not give up before you get to the gold. And I think that happens to so many people. They'll do something they love, and it might not be they might not be meeting their expectations of how much money they were going to be making, or how it was harder than they thought. I went through some really, really, really hard years. In fact, it's still challenging to run a business. It's challenging regardless.
Right.
But I would say that's a really big thing. Stick with it and put your customers or what you're serving first. I wanted to be happy, and I wanted to help people. I knew my dad's formulas were game changing, and I thought these need to be in the hands of the moms who their kid has a fever or their kid has a cold, or they don't want to. They're allergic to antibiotics. I want to be able to help people.
Yeah.
And then the final thing I would say to anyone is, the best way to walk through this life without trying to convince people to come and do what you're doing is just to set a pure example. Don't say you should be doing that, and hey, you should do that, and walk your talk. Walk through this life and live and breathe what you believe. And the people who are interested in what you do will find you.
I think that's amazing. Amazing. That's I relate to that so much, because part of the reason that I have this podcast is for that reason. So I do a lot of traveling, and I have a lot of windshield time. And you hear a lot of newscasts, you hear a lot of the things that are going on in the world, and a lot of the things are negative, or people who are utterly famous have done just really bad things to get there, right? And and I kept thinking, there's got to be a place in the world that you can go and hear about people who are doing cool things in their lives. They're helping other people. They're building something neat. They're building something new. And I thought, you know what? I don't know if that place exists. I'm going to make one. And so that's how I got to creating this podcast. And when you messaged me and we started talking back and forth, I was like, oh my gosh, she's got to come on the show, because she's absolutely amazing. And she's doing what the show is all about. So again, thank you for coming on the show.
Well, thank you for having me. I think that your message and your mission for your podcast is perfect, because the world needs to understand that there is so much positivity. We're in a place right now where this is where the people who are creative, who see all the positive and understand these life-changing times we're in, this is the best time to create. This is the best time to build your business. This is the very best time. Like, I can't say that enough.
That's amazing. I mean, it's
true.
It's so true. It's very true.
Yeah.
And so if people are looking for you, because now they're interested in learning more about medicinal herbs and plants, and they're looking for advice, or they want to read your book, tell me all the places they can find you.
So my website is barlowherbal.com. I have a little YouTube channel, Barlow Herbal, and I drop an herbal video once a week. And then every Sunday I do a Sunday message of love. And that's,
That
people have
awesome.
they've been able to watch my little spiritual journey over the last few years. And then Instagram at Barlow Herbal, but I'm easy to find, and I'd love to connect with like-minded people. So,
That's
and the book is on Amazon and Barnes & Noble, which is very cool.
That is pretty cool indeed.
Yeah.
And so, again, I just thank you for spending some time with me and taking a break from being out there doing the good work with the plants. I'm now energized. I mean, it's going to rub off on me. So
Woohoo!
yes, I'm going to be very positive, and I'm going to actually keep something alive. I'm going to let you know
Well, you
how it
have a
works.
spark in there, artist. I can totally tell. You got a green thumb. You just don't know it yet. You got
That's it.
pop
That's
your
it.
thumb. You're green. You're green. You're green.
That will be my plan. Jane, I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day. And
No.
I look forward to talking to you again.
Yeah, thanks, artist. It's been a total pleasure.
If you've made it this far, then I have to thank you for your time. I hope you've learned something new and enjoyed listening to the discussion as much as I enjoyed having it. I'd love to hear from you about the show because we're working really hard to bring you great content, and the feedback really helps us get better. If you like what you've heard or watched, for those of you who are streaming out on YouTube, then take a split second to give us a thumbs up or a like. It really helps other people like you find the show too. And no one likes to miss out on the good stuff, so go ahead and subscribe and hit the notification bell so you don't have to wonder when or if there's a new episode. And until next time, stay remarkable.